Ahead on Daytime Buffalo, filmmaker Peter McGinnis stops by to share his most recent project. And waste no time with Beaded Bellas here in our studio. It's all coming up right now on Daytime Buffalo. Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to Daytime Buffalo. I'm your host, Chelsea Lavelle. Welcome back. I missed you guys. Joining us now is a local artist and filmmaker that has been active in Western New York for over 30 years. Welcome, Peter McGinnis. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks. Oh, you just dated me right there. It's hilarious.
No, we are here to talk about you know what, you've had some years, but it's because you're so good and you put a lot of time in, and we're talking about your most recent project, which is Laff in the Dark. And you said it's a rock and roll musical comedy.
Yeah, a rock opera.
Rock opera.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
It's a film genre that was very prevalent in the late 60s and 70s. Films like Rocky Horror Picture Show, Tommy, Grease, Xanadu. I could go down the list. It means that music is really driving the narrative. And for me, dealing with something like Crystal Beach, which was just such in my DNA and fabric, and such the ultimate place of coming of age and memories, and I felt that the best way to tell that story would be musically through a rock opera, where we're basically getting on a ride. And it's got twists, it's turns, what's coming next, and it's a different way of kind of processing it. So it's interesting where you don't really have the time to think the way that you would in a conversation where we say a joke and we laugh. It's like the next thing's coming at you. And I kind of felt that was what the Laff in the Dark thrill ride was like.
Right. Well, so this is about Crystal Beach, which for our viewers that may not know or might not remember this amusement park, tell us a little about it.
Oh, 1888 to 1989, I mean, it was the most beloved amusement park. It brought together Americans and Canadians. In its heyday, 3,000 to 4,000 people would come across, the Canadiana. I mean, these ships, these ferries would bring people, dancing, the Harlem Nocturne in the evening. I mean, it was just a magical place. And I experienced it kind of at its end, but I didn't know any better. It was, in the late 70s to 80s. So for me, it was still just this fantasy of, starting to go there with your parents. And whether you went there just one time, like you took Kenmore days, or you went there, or you were privileged to be there and have it right in front of your face, it just left a feeling. And so that's what I'm going after, a feeling. They're the suckers, they're the waffles, there's all this rush of these
nostalgia.
Things. Nostalgia. But in the end, it's just like the last bonfire of the summer, just like, your first kiss. It's a feeling that I'm going after.
Truly a coming-of-age film.
Yes, from a teenage boy and who experienced it in the 80s. So a lot of... I want to talk about the cast. I mean, Josephine Hogan, Vincent O'Neill, a lot of Irish classical theater masters, Christian Tripp Kelly. It's to work with them in this, kind of intimate tribute, heartfelt tribute, was just a beautiful thing.
And, for you, what does it mean? You had your premiere over the weekend, and this is running at North Park Theater for the rest of this week. You told me that you've been working on this film for 7 years.
7 years, yeah, that is a crazy gestation for a film.
Because you not only wrote it, but you wrote all of the music, too.
I did, and we filmed in other vintage amusement parks, and they got shut down for 2 years because of the pandemic. And then there were some other issues. I've never, in my lifetime, I've never seen the world change as much as it has in the last, 5 to 7 years. But fortunately, I strategically approached this in stop-start segments to be able to allow the film to kind of gain a higher vantage point as we went along. And as we discovered relics, I mean, there's over 100 Crystal Beach relics in the film, let alone a lot of older footage. It seemed like people were coming out and saying, hey, I have this, could this? And so metaphorically, I started to think about like how to get this Canadiana. Well, we don't have that ship, but we have the Columbia that's in the river, you know, down here. So I'm starting, these things start to take on different kind of artistic expression for me. And when you're dealing with someone who has his head in the clouds like I do, it became this wellspring of just creative outpour. So it sustained itself over 7 years.
How was the premiere? How did it feel for you to see this work that's been, you know, in your mind, ruminating for all of these years, cultivating, creating, and it's finally here and done?
Yeah, you're giving me goosebumps just because, first of all, the North Park, it is equally a magical place, you know, in its own right. And then, you know, the ability to, there's something about sitting down and seeing it in a setting that it's meant, you know, to be in. And again, end of summer, just like a Last Bonfire, there was a seasonal component to this as well. You know, it had to play. I just started filming the sequel of this, which is a little different, but it called on me, like what the season, the North Park.
The last week of summer.
Last week of summer. Here we are in the last week of summer. So these other forces kind of guided. So I kind of made the pie shell, but the filling started to kind of come in as I went along in the process based on what was available to me, based on what was happening in the world, and just I just sustained it. So to see it cross the finish line, and Vincent was with me. That's Vincent right there, and Josephine is coming. It's just we did this. It got out of my head, and I was on my shoulders for many years, but to have that moment is great. But I will say it's the process that is equally as fascinating to me. We had over 200 young adults in this film. I'd like to think the park, American, Canadian, it traded in smiles. It was a feeling of just joy and just something that you want to cherish. This is my crazy way of cherishing it. I mean, it's a little bit of a mystical trip. It's a little trippy, to say the least, but that was the genre of the rock opera. So just be prepared for a wild ride, but know it's a musical love letter.
Alrighty. Well, Peter, thank you so much for coming in. Congratulations
thank you so much.
you know, creating this work of art. Viewers, you can get tickets to a screening of Laugh in the Dark by visiting northparktheater.org/showtimes. Again, it's showing the rest of this week. Thanks again for coming in, Peter.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, for having me.